I would say we need to have also a bit of better coordination in the investment plans.
I think it's extremely important that the rail sector as a whole makes its political influence felt.
If we want to have true interoperability in Europe, being able to drive across borders, we need to have a pan-European solution.
Hello, and welcome to episode 4 of the European Railcast, a podcast about the future of European mobility, brought to you by EU Rail, the European Partnership for Rail Research and Innovation under the EU's Horizon Europe programme. I'm Jacki Davis, and I'm the host of this podcast series. Innovation is key to meeting the multiple challenges facing Europe and to fostering the economic growth, competitiveness, sustainability, technological sovereignty and resilience that are so vital to meet these challenges. We heard in previous episodes of this podcast how critical the European rail sector is to meeting those goals and about some of the exciting developments that are helping it to play that role to the full. In this episode of the podcast, we want to delve deeper into how EU-level research and innovation are transforming the rail sector and why it's so important to move beyond those fragmented national efforts to develop joint solutions that work across borders to meet real needs. Hence the title of today's discussion, Connecting the Tracks, Harmonising Europe's Rail Future. So, what impact has EU-level research and innovation had to date? What is in the pipeline? And where do we go from here to deliver a harmonised, integrated European rail network that contributes to the maximum to meeting the EU's wider goals and the challenges we face? Joining me to discuss this, and I'm delighted to welcome them, are Sverre Kjenne, who is head of the ERTMS, European Rail Traffic Management System Users Group. We also have with us Gemma Salazar, who is Vice President, Strategy, Marketing and Technical Mainline Signalling at Hitachi Rail, and Ian Conlon, head of the System Pillar and Communication Unit at EU Rail. A very warm welcome to all of you, and thank you so much for joining us for this discussion. So, we've discussed in previous episodes of the podcast the need to build a truly integrated European rail network. But I want to ask you really, and perhaps Sverre, here I could start with you. How important do you believe as part of that EU-level research and innovation is? I don't know whether you can give us a couple of examples of how it contributes and the key barriers that have traditionally led to that fragmented approach that you're struggling and working to overcome and build the coordination we need. Why does this matter so much, Sverre?
I think it is essential. It is really key. And let me just give you a couple of reasons for this. One is the fact that if we want to have true interoperability in Europe, being able to drive across borders, we need to have a pan-European solution. If we have national solutions, we will not be able to run trains across borders. That is the one and very obvious reason. The other one is that the industry, the sector per se, is quite small in each country. That means that if you take a country like Norway, Denmark, Sweden, it's a very small volume country. So you need to have pan-European solutions to get off-the-shelf products to be able to have a competitive product and offering to be able to roll out a product.
What are the key barriers that European level research and innovation can help to overcome? What are the biggest challenges here?
The biggest challenges we find in each country. If I take my own country, I come out of Norway and been running the operations for signaling for years. And it is the fact that we have been developing our own solutions for a number of years. We have our own way of running trains. We have our national operational rules, which is basically the starting point of a national solution. So we need to find a common way to run trains in Europe.
And we'll come on to EU's rail in all of that in a moment. But Gemma, from your point of view, how important do you believe this EU-level research and innovation is? And what do you see as the key barriers that it's helping to address?
Yes, from my point of view, I think it's absolutely fundamental. We are talking about transforming the Europe's rail sector into something which is just not modern, but it has to be interoperable and attractive across borders. As you just mentioned, also this effect of the scaling will not be possible for the industry to follow when there are only national initiatives. And if we see the challenge that we have today, We are talking about cybersecurity. We are talking about climate change. We are talking about digitalization, AI, new regulations, but we also have to stay competitive versus the other mode of transport. So all of this is not going to allow us to have just single alone national initiatives. Barriers, as just mentioned, we have a huge fragmentation today. So we have legacy systems. These are the big one. Every country has its own signaling. Also, this singular control systems built up over decades, and this makes interoperability a real technical, but also a business case challenge, because we have a status quo, and this is very, very difficult to break. Then we have a patchwork of national regulations, different safety rules, and also is making it very, very difficult to roll out any new common solution in this environment.
But nevertheless, Ian, we have been seeing the development. I mentioned the European Rail Traffic Management System. We have digital automatic coupling for rail freight, multimodal connectivity, all these areas that you're working on. How do you see the role of public-private partnerships like Shift to Rail and now EU Rail in helping to tackle these barriers? What is it doing?
A couple of things. First of all, I completely agree with the analysis that's been presented. I mean, at base, it's a super complex system that we're trying to change. And the way that we try and address it in Europe's rail is not to ignore the complexity of it, but to take advantage of when a system is changing. So when a country is implementing a new technology, that we provide the solutions that they're European solutions. And this is what's not been possible before. So when France or Belgium or Norway comes to change its system, there is a European solution available. This is the approach that we take, and is the new approach. And why it's important in a public partnership sense is because rail in particular is it's a European endeavor, but nationally executed. So we need to have agreed at European level what are the basic rules. But then it needs to be executed by the individual countries. But of course, how does everyone agree? So this is the forum that we allow within the public-private partnership. We provide resource, we provide governance, and we provide the atmosphere in which railways can work together and suppliers can work together to bring these European solutions.
And I said earlier, your title, you're head of the system pillar. What is that? Not a phrase everyone will be familiar with. What is that system, and how is it helping in terms of that harmonised innovation that we need? Can you just explain in a little more detail what it is?
Yeah. So, I mean, we have the innovation work that we do at European level. So providing the solutions, but then we have to make sure that fits into the overall European system. So what does this mean? This means designing the operational rules that Sverre was talking about, how the railway runs, not on a country basis, on a European basis. This is what we do in the system pillar. We look at the European system and say, these are the operational rules that will work, agreed with the sector, and then we design technical solutions off that. So it's essentially this bridge between the pure R&I, here's the solution, to then how we implement a European level. So it's moving from R&I into the actual execution.
Perhaps we can talk about some of the concrete examples of how that's been applied in a moment. But Sverre, just to follow up with you, and I mentioned that you are head of the European Rail Traffic Management Systems User Group. Perhaps you might say 2 words about what that is, and for you, why EU Rail, why these sorts of public-private partnerships are so key.
The ERTMS Users Group was actually founded 30 years ago. So we will have an anniversary next week. And the interesting thing is that 30 years ago, it was a matter of proving that the concept would work. So now the main task is to help all the 13 countries have an efficient rollout of ERTMS. So we have gone from a focus on making sure that there is a concept that works to have an efficient rollout. So there are 13 countries coming together to say we will make this more efficient.
Okay, so Gemma, to bring this to life for people in terms of what it all means, can you give us some concrete examples of the sort of things that have been developed under this approach, which demonstrate that this EU coordination works and why it matters so much? Specific things you might mention?
Yes, absolutely. So it's very, you just gave the initial point. It was ERTMS. This is giving us the common signaling language. So now we have an interoperable system across Europe. But besides ERTMS, this is a starting point, and this should be the base for everything else that we are doing in Europe. We have automatic train operation. Is already standardized in the last TSI 2023, and this is allowing already going with a level 2, which is facilitating the driver, bringing energy saving, increasing capacity. And this was done through many prototypes in Europe, involving operators, infrastructure managers, and suppliers. We have also hybrid train detection, which is going to allow increasing optimizing the headway. And what is coming next? We have FRMCS, which is going to solve the obsolescence of
Stands
GSMR.
for FRMCS?
Future radio. Yeah, we should not use these acronyms, but and we should not
Every
use
industry does. Every industry
future.
does.
You cannot call something future, but at the end is to replace the former radio system, which is allowing the interoperability of the train management. Is a next generation is based on 5G or future 6G. So this will replace GSMR, which is getting obsolete. Then we have, you mentioned before, digital automatic coupling, which is going to digitalize the freights. Or one very nice example is the federated data spaces, which is going to help us to collaborate on predictive maintenance, on carbon tracking, or disruption management across Europe. So there are many initiatives which are going through collaboration, and prototypes are going to help us.
Indeed, and you mentioned prototypes, and there were, I think, some 695 plus prototypes under Shift to Rail, and the development, I think, of 72 harmonised solutions that have made it to market. Sverre, is there anything you would particularly highlight in terms of good examples of the difference this is making?
Yeah, and I would also like to stress the fact that I think we are going through a significant revolution. The digital revolution has really hit now the rail industry, and this enables a lot of different possibilities as long as we also manage to standardize, because you need to standardize in order to really benefit from the digital revolution. And we mentioned maintenance and predictive maintenance, being able to predict where the next error is going to occur, so that we can actually take action before we have a stop on the line. So there are a number of different topics that we now see develop fast due to the digital revolution.
Ian, anything you would add in terms of particular efforts that you think are making a major impact?
It was a fairly good list. I mean, there's also general kind of topics like cybersecurity. So obviously this is a subject of ever-growing importance. We hear of attacks, especially in countries which are in the east of Europe, and it's essential again that the approach that is taken is not done on a national basis. If you start doing things on a national basis, it just increases the complexity, and therefore with increased complexity you have increased cost. So earlier this year, we've published a whole suite of cybersecurity specifications which can be used by suppliers in the production of products.
And we're going to come back on that issue in a future episode of the podcast. So let's look ahead. We've heard about all the wonderful work that's going on and how it is already transforming the sector, but that transformation is ongoing and permanent, if you like, in order to make sure that rail really can deliver. We've talked in previous episodes about its importance for competitiveness, its importance for resilience, and so on. If we look to the future, and perhaps Sverre, I'll come to you first on this one, what do you think needs to be done to build on those successes to date? Where do we go from here? We started talking barriers. You've enumerated what you're doing to overcome them, but if we're to deliver a truly integrated European rail system, where do we go from here?
I really want to see off-the-shelf products. So I really want to see that we are able to come up with solutions that I can implement without having a significant local development. That is currently the situation. So I think the main thing right now is to make sure that we are cost efficient, that we have a business case that is efficient. And that comes down for me to off-the-shelf products, standardized solutions that are easy, or should I say fast at least, to implement.
Thank you very much. Gemma, from your point of view, where do we go from here? What do you want to see in the future?
Wow, I want to see a few things, but let me just say at least 4. So migration, we need to have clear strategies to define what is the path from the status quo to this harmonized situation that we want to create in Europe. Regulation, because without a strong frameworks, we will just deviate at national level again and again. So we have to keep these standards up to date. Deployment, so we need to have faster move from labs to trucks, and this means I would say streamlining approvals and still keep having pilots to bring these experiments to reality. And I would say we need to have also a bit of better coordination in the investment plans, because sometimes we see that it could be improved, the alignment between what is the policy, the standard is ready, the industry is ready to deliver, and the operational needs.
Thank you very much. And Ian, you talked at the beginning about the approach you're taking, which is to have, as you said, those solutions ready when systems are changing so they can be taken up at the appropriate moment. As you look to the future, where do you think we need to go from here? Will you be continuing to focus on the same challenges, or do you see new research and innovation challenges that will need to be addressed?
I think it's a mix of the two. I mean, I think we have essentially a working organization that is delivering. I mean, we have the question of will this be continued in the future? Our funding is linked to the funding for the Commission. I think it's extremely important that the rail sector as a whole makes its political influence felt. I mean, in this change from a few years ago, an emphasis on green policies, rail fit in naturally. Now we're talking about competitiveness and military mobility. Rail is also absolutely essential for that. So the sector needs to make its voice heard so that we have the means at European level, including a new partnership to deliver. So I think that's a really central part of it. And then also, on a day-to-day level, railways are coping with many things, right? In the past few years, they've coped with COVID and a complete change a collapse in ridership, a change in ridership, and also the continued pressure and cost of maintaining the system as it is. So it's always a challenge to think about the future when the present is already a challenge, but it's absolutely essential. So this is also the other challenge that needs to be met.
Thank you so much to all of you for being our guests today and for a fascinating conversation, for sharing your great insights with us. This podcast is brought to you by EU Rail, the European Partnership for Rail Research and Innovation under the Horizon Europe programme. And EU Rail aims to deliver a high-capacity integrated European rail network by eliminating barriers to interoperability, providing solutions for full integration, and achieving faster uptake and deployment of innovation through funded projects. And we've heard today just how it is doing that. So that is all from me, Jacki Davis. It's been great having you with us today. And thank you to all of the wonderful team who are involved in the European Railcast, a podcast about the future of European mobility. Stay tuned for upcoming episodes in the series. Goodbye.